You're staring at the task. It's not even that hard and you really want to do it. But for some reason, you procrastinate. You scroll on your phone, you open a new tab, or you clean your entire house. You feel guilty and you promise yourself, I will start in 10 minutes. Except it's already been an hour. My name is Dilan, I'm a psychologist and a coach, and in today's episode we're gonna look at different solutions for different kind of procrastinators, all based on science. There's a common misconception about procrastination that it's kind of like laziness, or only people without discipline have it. But in actuality, procrastination is just a protection strategy from your brain to protect you from something, and the sooner you know what it protects you from, the easier it is for you to move forward. The problem with procrastination is that it gives the illusion of a short-term relief, but in actuality, it's a long-term trap, because when you delay a task, you actually delay your identity. You delay becoming the person you wanted to become. You promise yourself you're gonna become. So it's way bigger than it seems. And sometimes people just brush it off. Oh yeah, I procrastinate, haha. But in actuality, it's a really tricky thing. So it's very important to have a look at it. So there's two different types of costs when we keep procrastinating. On the one hand, we have the health issues, the health costs, right? So chronic stress, research even shows this, anxiety, stress, which leads to burnout, and all of these health issues we get just from procrastinating our tasks. But on the other hand, we also have a super important cost which most people don't see. It's the erosion of self-trust, because you keep promising to yourself, I will do it tomorrow, I will start Monday, or this is gonna happen next year. But it doesn't, so you constantly break the promises you make to yourself, which will eventually just break your self-trust. So you don't believe yourself anymore when you say I'm gonna do it. And that has huge problems for your identity, for even liking yourself. I see many people who started this whole thing with procrastination and then not making deadlines. So it started as a productivity thing, but it ended with them being in my coaching sessions and saying, I don't like myself anymore. I don't trust myself anymore. What can I do? So you see how it gets bigger over time. Now that we established that procrastination is actually a huge thing that needs looking into, which is why I'm glad that you're here, we are gonna look at the psychology behind it. And there's a few things I wanna tell you about the psychology here, because they really explain why procrastination happens to us, or why our brain thinks procrastination is a good strategy. In 1975, there was a researcher by the name of Ainslie, and he found that people devalue the reward of something the further away it is in time, which is why we always try to have the smaller, short-term rewards rather than working on a long-term goal. Even if you want that long-term goal to happen, even if you have like big visions for yourself and you really want it to happen and come true, our brain is wired in a way that we always prefer the short-term reward, the short-term dopamine, whatever makes us feel good right now. And this phenomenon is called temporal discounting, which is when you simply discount the value of something that is farther away in time. And there have been super interesting studies, fMRI studies, which are imaging studies, so they show activity in the brain. And they have found that when people choose instant gratification, so for example, scrolling on your phone instead of working on the project you promise yourself you're going to work on, so scrolling on your phone, getting that instant dopamine is actually firing up the regions in our brain, which is called the limbic area, or the limbic regions. And that is basically our emotional brain, right? So these are the limbic system is like where the amygdala is, and all of this stuff is that we use for our emotions, to process them, to go through them, right? And then when we choose delayed gratification, so you choose not to scroll on your phone, but then rather work on the thing you promise yourself it's gonna be of value later on in your life, then what is actually activated in the brain is not the limbic system, not the emotional brain, but the prefrontal cortex. So what is right behind here, in the front of your brain basically, which is for our planning, structuring, organizing, problem solving. So It's a more rational part of the brain. So your brain literally, depending on what it chooses for you or what you choose to do, instant gratification or delayed gratification, it lights up in different areas. And the interesting part here is that the logical rational center in the front of your brain that is used for delayed gratification, it actually is weaker when we are under stress, when we have anxiety, and when we have something that's called decision fatigue. So you make a lot of decisions, then you become more and more exhausted with every decision you make, especially if they are like hard ones. For example, you decide you go to the gym, which was a hard decision for you because you didn't feel like it, and then you come home and then you decide not to eat on snacks and chocolate, which is then you get fatigued over time the more decisions you make. So that's super interesting to see that the brain also gets tired when we make a lot of decisions. So the goal is, and that's like a slight preview for later when I give you the solutions, the goal is to also help yourself make less decisions so you don't get fatigued. And there are a couple ways to get over temporal discounting, or some practices we can do in order to make it easier for us to choose delayed gratification. But at this point, I just want this to be an explanation for you why, even if the long-term goal sounds very, very nice to you and you want to have it, why you will always default to choosing the instant reward. And it's kind of hard to work against that, but it is not impossible. The second explanation, or the second study I wanted to show you, which is super interesting, is from 2011 by Hershfield and colleagues. And they have looked at the connection people have to their future versions of themselves. So they just measured how close do people feel to a future version of themselves, and what does that do with our decisions in the now. And what he found is, and this whole thing is called temporal self-continuity. And so we're talking about like future self-connection. That's also like in a term I want you to have. And what he found is that when people are feeling emotionally closer to the future version of themselves, meaning they maybe write letters to a future version of themselves, or they think about them a lot, they visualize their lives a lot, so just they feel close, they don't feel like strangers, then this is when it gets easier for you to make decisions in the now that will benefit your later version of yourself. So what that means is, if you keep your future version that you want to become closer rather than farther away from yourself, from your emotional state, if you envision them, if you picture them vividly, if you include them in your day-to-day thinking, then it will be easier for you to choose the delayed gratification over the instant gratification. So the opposite, that means if you have low self-continuity, meaning you have a low connection to your future self feels like a stranger and you don't feel responsible for her life. It's just a stranger. Like, what do I care how she lives? What do I care if my decisions are hindering her and her goals? But if you make it feel like a friend, or even like a sister, or someone who's very, very close to you, then you will value making the right choices now that you know will help her later. And again, there's been fMRI studies who can show the different brain regions that are activated. People who are not connected to their future selves have low self-continuity. When they think about their future selves, then the brain regions that get activated is the same ones that we activate when we talk to strangers. So the brain even knows, like the brain thinks these imaginary versions of ourselves are strangers to us. But then again, when the researchers made the people do exercises, writing letters to their future selves, envisioning them, visualizing them, talking to them, whatever practices they had, then you can see the shift in the brain, because then the imaging studies showed that the area that gets activated is more a self-referential area. So you think of it as yourself more, which is amazing. So the brain really does adapt to the practices, to the exercises, and then the brain really thinks the future version of ourselves is us. So these two things, temporal discounting and temporal self-continuity, are two very important explanations. They show you how your brain works, and you can use these information, these insights from these studies to actually change change your life to stop procrastinating, because now you know why you procrastinate, or two of the reasons why you procrastinate. Of course, there are like multiple in psychology, but these are two which are very, very important that people don't understand, that we choose instant gratification over delayed gratification automatically, and B, that the connection that we have to our future selves is very important when it comes to procrastination. And as you know, and this is kind of a quick interruption here, I work a lot with like psychological papers and studies. I read experiments because I feel like it's so important to get the knowledge that is out there and to spread it like I do here. And I really want to encourage you to also start looking into reading psychological papers, scientific stuff. Many people are scared of it because they feel like it's too complicated, it's too dry, I cannot read that, it's a lot. Or some people even come to me and say, I don't even know where to start, which is why I actually made a list. I made a list of the must-read psychological papers, which are so-called meta-analyses. So they're not an experiment per se, where you can really go through one single experiment. That's sometimes hard to read, but it's a accumulation of multiple experiments, of multiple researchers who came together to write a text on one specific theory. And I really wanted to share this with you because I do think there are a few studies or meta-analyses that people have to read if they are interested in psychology. And I've curated a list, and if you're interested in that list, you could just click the link in my description, and it's going to say like must read psychological papers. You can just click the link. It's free. You can grab those studies for free. I even put the PDFs in there too, so you can just start reading right away. I truly encourage you to do that because there's so much I learned from these papers on that list, and yeah, I just wanted to share. Now let's go back to procrastination. So now I want to jump over to the solution part, right? I mean, you're here to get a solution to stop procrastinating. So here's 4 solutions for 4 different types of players in procrastination. So we're going to go through the players. You can see if you identify with them, and then I'm going to give you some advice, some solutions, some psychology in order to get you started and make you stop procrastinating. So player number 1 is the planner. I see that a lot, and I also see that in myself a little bit. So basically, these are the people who just overplan. They plan everything. They have everything organized and structured for the project at hand or for the task at hand, but they never get to implementing their plans, because the execution is the hard part. The planning is the easy part, and they get lost in the planning and organizing before even starting the task. Oftentimes the deeper pattern here is that people, and it doesn't have to be the same for you, but what I see in my clients is that people who are planners are afraid of failing, so they hide in the planning portion, which is then the reason why they never fail, right? Because they don't even allow themselves to try and fail. So maybe some kind of perfectionism, fear of failure, we can see in here as a deeper pattern. And the reason for procrastinating is often overwhelm. So it's just a lot. They feel like they need to structure it and get lost in it. So here's what I would advise you to do, and have been advising my clients to do if they are part of the players of procrastination. I would say look at the top 3 excuses you have for not starting the task. Whatever that is. Everyone has excuses. Everyone has reasons why they're procrastinating. All of them are valid. I want us to embrace these excuses, and we're going to use them. We're not going to diminish them, but use them in order to get over procrastination. So just write down in 3 sentences 3 of your top excuses that you're having right now, why you're not starting your task. And then for each of these excuses, we want to put a so-called implementation intention, which is an if-then sentence in order to implement action. And the psychology behind this is that a scientist by the name of Goldwitzer in 1999 found that when people simply have a goal intention, and really want to achieve a goal, and they say, I will achieve that goal, it is not enough to guarantee success, which means it's not enough to guarantee an actual execution of the plans. So then he came up with this thing called implementation intentions, if-then planning, which basically is just a sentence that starts with an if and then adds a cue, which can be situational, which could be like linked to your environment, linked to the time, and then you have if Q, then your action, right? And then what you do is, for example, you say, if I finish at work, then I will stretch for 5 minutes. For example, if your goal is to just work on your mobility, work on your posture. I'm sorry. Work on your posture. You want to sit up more straight because you have backache, and you know, like stretching, mobility exercises will help, but you procrastinate or you never do them, which is then why you should put an if-then implementation intention. If I finish work, I will stretch for 5 minutes. For example, or you say, if you have an essay to write, you can say, if it's 7 a.m., then I will write 50 words. So you see what I'm doing here. I'm putting a cue, which could be environmental, which could be linked to your time. So either it is when I come home from work, when I finish something, when I brush my teeth. So everything can be a cue, right? And then the then portion, the action portion, is something that you pre-decide. So in the moment, when the cue hits, you don't have to make a decision, because as you know, making decisions will cause decision fatigue. So you want to make the decision now, you pre-decide, and then later on it can become automatic, because you know when the cue hits, when the clock hits 7 a.m., then I automatically have to do this thing. And that usually helps. So you look at your excuses, you put them inside of an implementation intention, and then you can practice them until they feel automatic. If it doesn't work, it means that your implementation intention is maybe too big, too vague. You have to be very specific. That's why I said when you need to write an essay, your implementation intention should be, if a cue, you decide which cue, then I write 50 words. Make it as specific as possible. You can even say, I write 50 words in 10 minutes. So make it as detailed and specific as possible. Then it guarantees you success. If you want, you can even write down your excuses that you're having. So just show us what problems you're struggling with in the comments section, and we will then together, I will then reply to you and give you an implementation intention that I think will work for you if you want. Player number 2 is the perfectionist. Everybody knows them. Maybe some of us have it inside of us as well, like in parts at least. And perfectionists, I don't have to explain what they do, but they basically want to make everything perfect. And when it's not perfect, they cannot really deal with failure. And perfectionism is always super linked to procrastination, because you tend to procrastinate something where you're unsure if you can do it perfectly. So if you're not sure that you can really do it perfectly, you would rather not do it at all, which leads to procrastination. And the pattern I see here in one of my clients I had, she was a perfectionist, and she knew, but then we kind of discovered that her self-worth is very strongly linked to her performance. And that means that in her childhood, at some point, she learned that whenever she did something well, like when she did well in school, when she was just a good child, her parents would then reward her for her performance, and not, so they would, I can't talk today, they would reward her for the outcome and not the effort she put in. And that is a common mistake I see in parenting, which is, my parents did that too. Many parents believe, I have to reward my child and that's good. And you can, obviously, but that can lead to your child growing up thinking that only when I perform well and the outcome is good, I am worth something. And even for me, I do see that in myself as well. For example, when I post something online and I really put a lot of effort in, and I really, really did a lot of work in order to post something, maybe YouTube video, an Instagram video, whatever it is, and then I see the performance of the video is not good, so the outcome is bad and not many people watched it or people didn't like it, I really feel discouraged in my self-worth, because I feel like, okay, why does nobody like what I'm doing, right? Although I know there's always people who like what I'm doing, and although I know that my self-worth is not dependent on the outcome or the number of views and likes, but I do watch myself get into that trap very, very quickly because it's just the way I grew up, and many people have. So that is always something that's worthy to look at. Like, how do you define your self-worth? Is it connected to your outcomes or your like inputs? And we should focus on, I should be happy with putting a lot of input into the video, no matter the outcome. That would be like the dream situation. So basically, why the perfectionists procrastinate is because they want to protect their identity. So it's a form of self-protection, because their identity, their self-worth is linked to how well they perform. So what I did with my client who was a perfectionist, we kind of developed this thing that we called the ladder of quality. So she had a deadline, and she had to prepare something essay, like I'm not really sure what it was, but she had to do something, and she couldn't get started because she had so much pressure, and the deadline was getting closer and closer, and the pressure was just higher, and she had perfectionism. She wanted to do it perfectly, and that kept her from getting started. So what we did, we said, okay, imagine this ladder of the quality of your essay, and you only want to get from rung to rung. So you don't have to jump into the mountain, but you have like this ladder where you can do it step by step. And that really helped her, the metaphor, because the rung number 1, so the first rung she was going to climb, which was not a hard climb, right, is kind of just like her dumping all of her ideas on paper. So she knew what she had to do. She was very skilled at what she did. And then I told her, okay, the first rung is just an ugly draft. You just put everything you know onto paper, and then we can move on from that. And that really helped her, because that felt like a easy step to take, right? It was just, okay, well, I have ideas in my head, and I'm just going to put them on paper. Typos welcome. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct. It doesn't have to look good. Just like an ugly draft where you just put everything out. And these ugly drafts, they help a lot, because they just keep away all the pressure, and they allow you to get started, to build momentum. And momentum is really helpful here, because when you get on the first rung, you feel like you can do the second rung as well. And then the following rungs are just, for each session, you want to climb a rung. And then for each task, the ladder looks differently, right? But for her, it was like maybe 5 or 6 sessions of writing. And then she planned them in her week, and until the deadline. And she wanted to, so we set a new deadline before the actual deadline, where we wanted to have a 70% quality. And for her, that was like 5 or 6 rungs, I'm not sure. And that's what you have to define. So you have the first rung, where you just do the ugly draft, and then you turn the draft into something that is of 70%. Oh my God, a wasp was just, okay, no, she didn't come in here. You have to, every session, get a step closer to your goal of 70% quality. And then for her, the non-negotiable was every session, and then we looked, maybe the ugly draft was like 5% of quality, and we wanted to get to 70%, so we had 65%, and then she divided that equally onto the rungs, so she could really track her efforts. That was amazing. It was such a good structure for her to get started, and then to keep going step by step until she hit 70%. That's like the second level we want to get at. And then the last level, the last rung we want to climb before we get onto the mountain, is actually sending it. People also procrastinate like sending in their drafts because they feel like it's not perfect. So the last rung is a step from 70% to sending the thing. And once you hit 70%, the sending should always be a day later, not a week later. You don't, like, time is going to kill your momentum. So here you have to be very fast. Once you reach 70% of quality, the next day you will send that shit away. And that was the rule we had. I was her accountability partner, her coach in that, and it really helped, because then she really managed to put together an essay in like a week or 2, which was amazing. It was not 100% perfect, but I mean, what does that even mean? So yeah, with perfectionists, sometimes we have to go step by step and really build up that momentum in order to get things done. Player number 3 is the so-called pleasure seeker. So someone who says, I will just have a look at my Instagram first and then I get to working. So these are typically the people who when their alarm goes off in the morning, the first thing they do is scroll on their phone, and they're like, okay, I will get up at 8 a.m. So when the clock hits 8 a.m., I will get up. But then you see, oh no, it's 8:02, so I have to wait until 8:15 until I get up. So these people are just stuck in that dopamine loop. They're addicted to dopamine, and their threshold is very, very low because they have just, you know this, everybody falls in this trap at some point. I usually fall in this trap when I'm sick, because then there's not a lot I can do and my routine gets all messed up. So yeah, I do scroll for a couple hours when I'm sick. I said it, okay, I'm sorry. So these people basically have no impulse control left because they just got used to the dopamine that they get from just scrolling on their phone, the instant gratification, and maybe they still want to reach their long-term goals, and they have like phases where they say, oh no, I really have to focus, like this is the phase where I'm like hustling, this is gonna be it. But it never happens because you just eroded your self-trust, and there's no way you can do it now if you don't follow these simple rules. Or I have these practices for you. I think it's 4 of them, and these are really good. So let me go through them with you. Number 1, you should add now rewards to later goals. Meaning, if you have your goals clear, which you should have, right? You should know what you want to be working on. The steps should be clear. Add now rewards. So add instant gratification to your delayed gratification, because we know temporal discounting, we know that's like our brain's default to rather have instant gratification than delayed gratification. So what you do is, when you work on your goal, maybe a 1-hour session where you work on the thing focused, then you tell yourself afterwards, I get to scroll on my phone for, 10 minutes. So and then you have to stop, of course. So you can use, and that's tip number 2, you can use apps to then automatically lock your phone, or you can use accountability partners to then take away your phone. So really use the help you need in form of apps or friends and accountability, wherever you can get it, to really get you away from the instant gratification. So don't diminish it completely. We still want to use it, and we want to add it to our work sessions, but then we have to stop. And sometimes we need help with that, because we're addicted. How do you tell an alcoholic to stop drinking alcohol? It's not that easy, so we need the help. And then the third thing you should do is to anchor your motivation in your identity, because motivation alone doesn't cut it for us. Motivation alone, it fluctuates. You cannot guarantee that it's going to be there and help you when you need it most. So what you should do is anchor your motivation in your identity. So instead of being like, I'm super motivated to go to the gym, I want to do it like 5 times a week, I'm going to be super jacked, you should rather put it in an identity language, which could be, I am the type of person who goes to the gym. I am a gym goer. I am becoming who I always wanted to be. I'm going to be a healthy person. I'm going to, you know what I mean? So it's like an identity-based language instead of motivation-based language. It's just a tiny shift, and maybe you do it already, which is then amazing, but it's a tiny shift that helps your brain understand. The more we talk about something in an identity language, the more important it is to our brain, because identity is the foundation of all of our behavior, our thoughts, our everything. So identity is just the foundation of everything. So whatever you want to become, whatever your goal is, whatever your motivation for that goal is, put it in an identity-based language, and even put it on a post-it and put it somewhere where you can see it every day. It really helps. And then the last exercise I want you to do is, I want you to visualize and strengthen that future self connection. We talked about that, right? Temporal self-continuity. People who have a strong connection to their future selves are just better at making decisions that will help you reach your goals. So really try to, what I said, maybe write a letter to your future self, or even in the small thing you can do, or the smallest thing that is so easy, is you could ask yourself every day, what would my future self thank me for today? So what did I do today that helped her later? So really try to build that connection, make it so they are not strangers to you, but familiar to you. Because as you know, we had that temporal self-continuity, super interesting, and it works. And now player number 4, our last player for today, is the paralyzed. So basically this type of person procrastinates because they're just overwhelmed. It's just so much. So much to do, so much to decide, so much chaos that you don't know where to start, and then you just do nothing because you're paralyzed. I know a lot of people that feel like this and that feel very, very helpless because they really have the motivation, they have the intention to do something, but there's just shutdown and they cannot explain why. So I'm here to explain why. What they experience is something that is called cognitive overload, which is from a scientist called Sweller, and I think it's from 1988. Yeah. So what he found out in his cognitive load theory was, and scientists are discussing the exact number, but basically our brain, our working memory, can only hold up to let's say under 10. So people say 5 to 7, under 10. Let's say 7 chunks of information, right? So we have a limited amount of information chunks that we can process at once. And think about it. What you're doing now is you're hearing my voice. Maybe when you're on YouTube, you're watching my video, then you hear something else. Maybe you are a little bit hungry. So all of these things are chunks of information. Our brain is constantly filled. So these spots are always filled because there's so much around us, so many stimuli, that it's just a lot per default. So then when you want to achieve a goal and your task at hand is super complex with a lot of steps and a lot of decisions to make right now, there's not enough space in your working memory for that because some of the chunks are already given to different things. So what then happens is your working memory is overloaded, which is called cognitive overload, and it causes a complete shutdown. You will not be able to function because it's just too much, literally. Yeah, so that's what science tells us about this. Whenever you feel overwhelmed or if you feel like someone who is paralyzed a lot, then this is the reason for it. And it's just a lot. It's just decision fatigue. It's just a lot of information, and we have to reduce that. So here are a few things you could try. Just do it step by step. I know you've heard this before, but ask yourself, what is the next tiniest action I can take? And that can be just opening your laptop. That's it. So really think in tiny, tiny steps. Every single step you take is something you can cross off your working memory. It's done. So when you have something, you want to go at your desk, you want to start working, it's just a mess. Maybe it's like your desk is a mess, your head is a mess, everything is a mess. Just sit down, do one thing, open your laptop. Next thing, close all your tabs. Next thing, maybe find a pen you can write with. Next thing, and then you do it like this, like do it step by step, because otherwise your working memory will immediately shut down, and it does take a lot of time for it to go up again. So really be careful, do it step by step. I know it's annoying, I know we want to get shit done, but sometimes there are situations like these where we need to slow down. And then for your goals, sometimes cognitive overload happens when your goals are too vague, too complex. So the first thing you should do is look at your goals. If your goal is, I want to be healthier, then you did everything wrong what you can do wrong. Because our goals are not allowed to be vague. It has to be super specific, super detailed. What does that mean when you say you want to be healthy? And then you have to break it down into small chunks. So really, the task should not be taking you longer than 10 minutes. That's how you should be thinking. So you break the goal down into tasks, and the task should be super, super simple to do. If you want a complete guide to goal setting, basically, I made a video on that. I think it's episode 10. I'm not sure. I'm going to link it here so you can watch it. And really start there. If your goals are too vague, you should start there first. What also helps is something that is called habit stacking, which is when you add an action to a habit you already have. For example, you don't even have to have a super crazy habit. What I do is brushing my teeth every single day. And I hope you do that too. That's a super simple habit everybody should do, right? Brushing their teeth. So what I do is I attach an action, a small action, to a habit that I already have. Or for example, what I do is I use my coffee, because I drink coffee every single morning, and I have been for hundreds of years. So that's where when I want to build a new habit, I wanted to start reading psychological papers more, and I wanted to do it more structured. And what I did is I added the routine to my coffee. So I tell myself I use implementation intentions. You see how I use everything, habit stacking and implementation intentions together. And I told myself, if I have my coffee in the morning, which is every single day, then I will read in my psychological paper for at least 15 minutes. So you could just habit stack. Use something that you already have and stack something else on top. It will make it easier because you are already in action. You're not starting from scratch, from doing nothing to doing something, but you are already in action, meaning it's easier for you to do the next action. And the last thing I want to tell you is sometimes the paralyzed wait for clarity. They wait for the moment where everything seems clear, where they know what to do. They wait to feel right. And that's like so bad, because when is it gonna happen? It's not gonna happen. I mean, you're working on your goals for what, a few years, and you haven't reached them yet? That's weird. It's literally, you cannot wait for clarity to come. You cannot wait for confidence to come. You cannot wait for these things. These things happen when you are in motion. So you just need to move, even if you move in the wrong direction. Just yesterday, I gave someone the advice who was not sure how they should move on with their life. I said, who cares? It doesn't matter which way you go. It doesn't matter if you go left or right. What matters is that you go, you take the step. All right, my camera just shut down because it's too hot today. But where was I? I was talking about the advice I gave yesterday. So when you're standing in front of two possible ways, two possible routes you could take A, you could take B. You don't know where it's going to take you, if it's going to take you in the right direction you want to go. But if you stand there thinking about it, overthinking it, and really just using what is inside of here to try to solve this problem, you're wrong. You should start moving, because once you just take a step forwards and then the other foot and then the other foot. Once you build that momentum, that movement, clarity will come along the way, and you should be fine with making mistakes. Maybe route A was not the right route. But then what you did was you started moving. You started going in that direction, and then you adjusted along the way, which is always better, always. So that's just on that. All right, and that were the 4 players. I hope you could find yourself in one of them. If you're still unsure which one of them you are, maybe we are multiple ones, but different kinds of players at different days. So don't stress too much about it. But if you want to find out what fits you more, which description, which advice fits you the best, then you have 2 options right now. One is, if you really want advice on your individual situation, just book a discovery call with me. Just the link is in the description. Click on it, pick a time and a date. And I really would love to get to know you, to get to know your struggle, and to help you however I can. This is the reason why I'm doing this. So that's the first option. But if you're a little bit shy, no problem. I have something for you, which is an interactive quiz or an assessment. So it's going to take you 5 minutes, and it's going to lead you through a few questions, and then in the end it shows you what is currently a struggle you should be working on. It categorizes you into those players, and it gives you the piece of advice that you need to hear. So that's something I would really encourage you to do. Just take the assessment. I really put a lot of effort into this, so try it out. Give me some feedback how you like it, and I hope you will find the thing you need to do right now. It's different for everybody, which is why I decided to break it into these players, and I really hope it helped. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section or DM me on Instagram, or even better, book a call with me so we can get to know each other. And yeah, I would say have good luck in working against your procrastination. I know it's a huge task. I struggle with it sometimes myself, so it comes and goes in phases. I'm here with you. So yeah, let's try together. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.